Hey, good afternoon, Galleon. This is Mayor Tom O'Leary with another of our ongoing interviews, conversations with candidates for public office in our area in the upcoming primary. Especially excited today to have Craig Swartz, who's over from Upper Sandusky. He is an unopposed Democratic candidate for the Ohio Senate, and everyone who is going to vote in a couple weeks knows that we have a pretty revved up and exciting Senate race going on. And while the two Republicans are engaged in might be a little fratricide, you might hope that it's fratricide. You've been, imagine pursuing your campaign within Democratic circles and meeting as many people as possible. So I want to welcome you to Galleon and kind of start out by asking you to share what your background in local government or politics is. Have you been involved before, first time candidate?
Well, I've had, thanks for having me do this, because I love this.
Sure, it's neat.
This is all part about getting my message out. And we do have very few avenues, like you mentioned just a little while ago about the paper.
It's really true. Mm-hmm.
I've had two political lives in my lifetime. The first was after college, and I did some traveling abroad, worked in Munich, did some study in Paris, came back, and got engaged fairly quickly in national politics. So I was a volunteer, state volunteer coordinator for Gary Hart in the '84 campaign.
I saw him on TV the other day.
Yep.
Made me feel young. But go ahead.
No, that's all right. And then we worked pretty hard on that one. We were able to
Yeah.
beat Mondale that year. That was when Mondale was getting his Super Tuesday, bonanza, and he had that "Where's the Beef" campaign. You may
I remember
that.
all that. For sure.
So Gary Hart's campaign was excellent. It was just a really good training for me, and I decided at that point to travel to Washington, D.C. and seek employment, either on the Hill or in some kind of capacity. I ended up working in a law firm, international law firm, and learning international tax issues. But still getting engaged by 1988, I'm working on Jesse Jackson's campaign. Paul Simon, Bob Kerry, a lot of phone banking, some canvassing and everything else, but some writing, but staying fairly engaged. There was a brief stint. I worked in London for a couple of years, came back, sort of was working again in the '92 campaigns, just seeing who I wanted to sit with for a little bit. But then a job came up, and I went overseas to Bahrain. I was gone for a while. Now coming back, and as I said, I worked in New York City, and I was sort of like the proverbial, guy from Green Acres. I was working on Park Avenue in a plush office when opportunity came knocking to buy a restaurant in Upper. And so in 2000, I bought that restaurant, and I never second guessed it. At one point I probably did. I thought, well, my gosh, I used to do this, and now I'm here. But it's what a change. But right away I noticed that with the background I have and everything else, I was able to impart quite quickly, with some of the local people and everything. I saw right away that there was no local businesses being represented on city council.
I gotcha. Yeah.
And so in '03, I decided to run for the Upper City Council, and a lot of people, including my wife, were saying, hey, God, you're the outsider.
Right.
And, but I canvassed the whole town. Printed a little flyer, marched up and down, stuffed all those doors and everything, and I'm happy to say I finished. I think it was in second place.
And in that large race?
Yeah, it's not large.
Yeah, the restaurant that Craig bought is the Poorhouse. So I'm sure there's a lot of Galleon area people who ventured over there.
Oh yeah.
But I remember at the Poorhouse is they made Mexican cool in this part of Ohio before all the big plastic signs. So that before there was Taco Bell and those Chi-Chis and whatnot, the Poorhouse was cranking it out.
Oh yeah.
It had quite a regional reputation for that. So, but So you were on council
for
for
4 years, so '07, and then I decided, well, I was, wanted to run for mayor, because
Yeah.
I had some ideas about where we could take the town, and as I was said before, saw a crash coming.
Right.
And when we started losing the factories and the good paying jobs,
Right.
I mean, Tower Automotive, that was union.
Right.
And when they went out, I saw my business drop big time every month. So that's when I started, basically, when I was kind of, making my
Right.
pitch, that we could do avenues for the town to search out for, for, try to attract different businesses, things like that. '08, ran for state rep.
Yep. Now, who was that? Who would that be against? Reinhardt or McLean?
Well, that was gonna be an open seat, so Jeff hadn't, but I lost the primary to Wanda.
Oh, Wanda Sherry.
Yeah.
Well, when I was county commissioner, and we'll get off this quickly, I was part of the group that hired her to come down and be GFS director.
Oh, okay.
I've knew Wanda, her family, her husband, and, so then she ran against Jeff.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the best laid plans. So here you are back again, huh?
That's right, so it's been a 10-year hiatus,
Right.
and during which time, we had to close the restaurant as a result of the economic crash, by which point I had acquired my CDL. So I was driving double trailers across country, for FedEx.
Wow.
So my wife was running the restaurant, and then after we shut it, I just returned home, got a second shift job in Marion factory, drove a forklift, did that for a couple of years. I wrote a sci-fi novel, when I came home, after my shift. Then got my insurance license, still helped out my two brothers with their businesses.
That's pretty neat.
Yeah,
So,
I learned the CNG business. I started working for a guy that was gonna start developing compressed natural gas stations. Yeah, around truck stops and everything. And that's when I started learning about energy.
Sure.
About natural gas and the potential that Ohio has.
Right.
I substitute taught down at the Tri-Rivers for 6 years. And now I have my real estate license. I have a side business where I advise.
So you got a really, wide ranging in terms of the kind of occupation, but the other wide ranging all around the globe.
Yes.
Had a lot of imagine you see that as an advantage. One of the things about north central Ohio is a lot of us have not had that much exposure to outside of Ohio, outside of the area.
That's
Do you
right.
think you can parlay that sort of world perspective or regional perspective
Well, that's what.
at the State House?
Absolutely. The two audiences that I was speaking to this morning earlier, I was bringing that same, vision, if you will.
Right.
That because of my background and everything else, I've seen how other places have done it, and we should be trying to employ those same practices here. We're no different from the Norwegians or from the Arabs who have been able to take their energy resources and leverage them and rebuild some of their institutions, or keep some of their institutions afloat. For instance, Norway has the largest sovereign wealth fund in the world. So in the past 20 years, they've raised $2 trillion. Now that's coming off their North Sea oil profits.
Sure.
And it's a state-run company, I get that. But nonetheless, those profits enable them to pay for their education, their health care, their infrastructure, their pensions.
Right.
All are coming out of that wealth fund, and they're already making the transition off fossil fuels.
So I read an article recently. It was a candidate's article. It talked about the being sort of traditional Democrat in the sense of sort of traditional Democrat solutions for economic or societal problems. And that description, you look at other national examples that really. So that article is pretty accurate. You see yourself as a traditional working person's Democrat.
Correct.
Fair statement?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would be somebody that you could say was in probably the FDR mold.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
coupled with a little bit of Teddy Roosevelt, if he was alive today, he'd probably be a Democrat.
We could debate that, but we don't have enough time. Go ahead, yeah.
And certainly, I look at things that even, Lincoln, who's probably my favorite president. Again, if you look at the history, Lincoln today would probably be considered a Democrat, okay? Because the
Well, it's pretty radical.
Yes.
It's pretty radical.
The parties were switched at the time.
Uh-huh.
But that's sort of the message that I bring to this area. And when I talk to people about the Democratic Party, what really got me fired up was a couple of years ago in 2018. This was got me back into it.
Mm-hmm.
When Kasich was on national TV deriding the Democrats, saying,
Yeah.
I don't know what they stand for anymore. Part of me was like, man, he's saying that, I can't believe it. And the other part of me was like, he's right.
Yeah.
I don't know what Democrats stood for anymore.
Right.
40 years ago, when we started chasing Wall Street money,
Mm-hmm.
that was Clinton, all those guys, Dukakis, they wanted to go that way. They walked away from the teachers, the unions, the blacks,
Right.
the farmers.
Okay,
The
so
trade deals start coming in.
Well, you're right
You look
about
at these
that. Yeah.
towns. Look at your town. Look at
Sure it is.
all these things. Finley's been able to to swim through, but that's because they've had a couple of major employers stick by. But
Well, not everybody has Marathon.
Right. Well, that's it. But
And they got when they split up
Yeah.
Marathon, they got the old timer in politics said white meat off the chicken. He was a Depression era guy, and all he said. But they got the best part of Marathon when that company split up. So that's been great for Findlay.
Sure.
And I think it helps. Seneca County and that area north of Crawford. But
yeah.
But it's an outlier. I think we both agree.
Well,
that Findlay is not. The rest of us are in a different
correct.
world.
When you
in
have
certain
that,
respects.
when you have that kind of situation, where they, a major employer and that's, staying put like that, that's the magnet. So that's
Right.
your economic,
Right.
opportunity zone, if you will. And they're gonna be a net importer of jobs.
Mhm.
The trick for our district is to places like Fremont, Marion, Fostoria, Galleon, is to create new zones without giving away the bank. And
Sure.
you've got to come up with a transition to an economy where we've got to be in 10, 20 years where we're employing these kids coming out of high school. There's a pathway for them to,
Sure.
And so we have to
And the
start.
pathway's not just to Toledo or just to Columbus. The
Right.
pathway is
Yeah.
building a life in the smaller
Right,
community.
and you have to take into account that automation that's a moving train.
Sure.
That's not stopping.
That's right.
All right.
Uh-huh.
So you're gonna figure out a way we're gonna keep these people employed, we're gonna retrain them for the future, and they still have a stake after they get laid off by the future robot.
Right.
Now there's certain, you've heard this universal basic income.
Sure.
All right.
Andrew Yang's thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
The Europeans have a slightly different take on it. What I like is their approach where, let's say you're working at a factory and maybe in 5, 10 years time, there's gonna probably be a robot that's gonna take your
Mhm.
place.
Mm-hmm.
Well, why don't have these employees become shareholders in these companies? The company's gonna still maintain, they're gonna go on, provided that they do it right. That way, when they get the pink slip, they've still got a stake, there's still a financial stake,
Right.
in the company. that
Well,
they work for.
in Ohio, the ESOPs were a lot more frequently discussed.
Yes.
They were a lot more frequently employed tool when you were trying to rebuild or avoid losing a company.
Correct.
Seems like that has
It-
died off. Now, Glen Hill Road Machinery here in Galleon
Yep,
is an ESOP company, employee-owned company, and it really was for business succession. When the owner sells the company, there's significant tax breaks, as you know.
correct.
I'm not sure how many of our viewers realize that, but they have significant tax breaks, and the ability of workers to be owners is sometimes the challenge to make that transition.
That's right.
And
But
really
what-
the
but-
last couple
but-
of
go ahead.
go ahead. I was going to say the last couple of administrations, state of Ohio administration, have really sort of de-emphasized employee ownership.
That's right.
And I think it probably that de-emphasis has to something to do with the waning of industrial trade unions. Because
Oh,
a lot of
absolutely.
times
Yeah,
ESOPs and the trade unions, they were the main movers to try to get employees to see themselves as more than just employees, more than just union members, but as owners.
Yes.
So I think that
Well,
in
they-
the absence of trade unions, it's
In the late '70s, you remember, I think this would have been '78, '79.
yeah.
In Youngstown Sheet and Tube went to Carter. And they were, Youngstown Sheet and Tube was gonna close their doors.
Yeah.
And the employees approached Carter and said, hey, man, we need a bailout. Now, what they were looking for at the time was actually just federal loan guarantees.
Right. Right.
They were gonna arrange for, they were gonna do an ESOP, and they were gonna arrange for the financing and everything else. They were just looking for those federal guarantees, and Carter turned them down.
Yeah,
That's what started the whole Blue Dog thing.
Oh, the unwinding of that. So,
Yes.
well, let's get to some things
Go
in
ahead.
2020 in this issue. Issues that I mean, I hope they're important to you and Mr. Swartz. I know they're important to me, so stick with me on this. One of them is the lack of visibility over the last 8 years in the state Senate seat. I've been mentioned before that I've talked to the two Republican candidates. They've recognized that the incumbent has not been very visible. What do you have to say about that? The role of a General Assembly member to be present in the community and to be accessible. How do you feel about that? And how would you propose to do more than we've experienced in the past 8 years or so?
Well, there's a couple things we could do. First off, start holding meetings, regular meetings, and not just based on who's on your call list, or
Right.
you're at the end of a robocall or whatever. It's, to me, disheartening, to say the least, that they continue to ignore the will of the people.
Right.
I don't know if they do it on purpose, but you're the voice for these people.
Right.
And how can you be the voice if you're not listening to what they're saying?
Yeah,
It's so basic to me. Now, one of the people you referred to hasn't held a town hall meeting since he's been a representative.
Yeah, I think you have to be comfortable with constituents and
Yeah,
almost look forward to that
yeah.
kind of engagement to talk with people about what's on their mind.
Yeah. The other thing you could do is there are now, with the age of technology, tools to access what's going on at the state legislature. So you can Google something, and it's going to take you right to the bill, and it's going to give you the short title, long title, and the description of the bill and everything else. And there's going to be certain keywords. So that legislative app does exist.
Right.
A lot of people probably aren't aware of that. I would go a step further and get an actual, it's not an app because you have to go in and actually go get it, but I don't think that's downloadable onto your phone. I would go a step further and have a downloadable app on your phone, like Facebook,
Right.
and everything else. And that way, when legislation is being proposed at the General Assembly, your phone's getting a notification right away. That algorithm exists. I mean, it already exists with the Google and Facebook and everything else.
Yeah.
Why don't we do the same thing? So those things, you would set this up, and you put in those values that are important to
Right.
you. But anytime something like that is being even considered down in Columbus, you're being notified, and you're going, well, wait a minute. And then you have a way to contact me.
That's a great idea. You can also do it the other way. You're walking down
Instantaneous,
the
in
hall.
real time.
Yeah, you're sitting, you come out of a committee meeting, you go back to the office, you're sitting in the office waiting for the next thing or constituent, whatever that, and you could do 2 or 3 minutes talking with people who have, I don't want to subscribe necessarily, but maybe that's the right word. And you could have direct, I mean, it's 1 on 20,000, but it seems like
It's-
one-on-one
yes,
conversation. That's a
correct.
neat idea. I don't think we've heard, Matt, we've not heard that idea, huh?
No.
All right, good idea. I'll write that one down. I'll claim it later. Okay. No, that's a great idea, Craig. Because it is difficult, and the explanation given by people bigger the geographic district the more difficult it is.
That's
but
right.
technology can make you close, and
It should
could
make
be
you more accessible.
Yeah, you could
Correct.
be sitting in Fremont talking about something happening in Marion
Well, and
County.
the reason why I'm so passionate about this in terms of the visibility, I'm glad you bring this up, is that HB6, you familiar with the energy bill that was passed last year?
Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
So HB6 doesn't necessarily, well, it affects us a little bit, but this is mostly First Energy customers, ratepayers in
Right.
Northeast Ohio, and I think Northwest a bit too. And two conversations I had with a friend of mine in Cleveland and a couple that I know in Toledo, they started getting the flyers in the mail
Yeah,
during the summer when it was possibly going to be back and become an issue again.
yeah.
Even though it was passed law. And I said, well, what was this about? And I explained to them, and they had never heard about HB6.
Yeah.
When it was even being discussed months before in the legislature. Despite opposition, I think it's on the order of, I think it was at least 3-1.
Uh-huh.
I don't think I'm exaggerating. In terms of the amount of people that were opposing that legislation. The national press has derided us as passing the most backward energy legislation ever by a state house and signed by a governor.
Jeez.
In the country.
Yeah.
Because it is, in effect, what you're doing, and I understand about the jobs, and there were some Democrats that voted for that legislation,
Sure,
and I understand
sure.
that, I understand the notion about the jobs. But you just gave them the bailout money with no strings attached.
Mm-hmm.
And you're bailing out coal plants, one in Indiana, one in Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
Because the co-ops own these plants.
Right. Yeah, we are in Galion. You're in municipal power community, a little
Yes.
bit like Cary, and we have a fairly large slice of a coal burning plant out in Illinois. So we're in this community a little bit more tuned to the nuclear bailout or the selective
Right.
bailing out.
Yes.
I think that's an all right verb, explains it, of the two coal plants. But
Right.
yeah, that's a real good example of something that had a broad impact that was poorly understood, and it seemed getting the word out from the General Assembly to their constituents wasn't a top priority.
No.
So a lot of information through paid advertising representing both
Correct.
points of view, but nothing that we
Well-
would consider a PSA or any.
No, and
Yeah.
the paid advertising, largely on the side of, supporting the bailout,
Right.
which was I can't.
Well,
I
first,
used to know
yeah.
the name of this firm, but they were rehired.
Uh-huh.
The same firm that pushed HB6 in the first place
To take-
was
yeah.
months later was rehired for the disinformation campaign.
Yeah.
They didn't disclose the fact that what they were trying to get at real
Right.
quickly is that the guy that was pushing for the referendum is a big natural gas concern
Yeah.
up in North Cleveland, and I think I'm kidding. So he's pushing for this, and he has Chinese money
Mm-hmm.
within his in his portfolio backing him up.
Right.
All right, and it's a Chinese bank, and First Energy was saying that's how you're going to get the Chinese were to get everybody's information.
Mm-hmm.
That was the Chinese connection.
Oh,
What they didn't disclose was that First Energy had a loan from the very same bank, and if they didn't get that bailout and it declared bankruptcy again, that bank was going to be on the hook.
So it would ripple across
Yeah.
both sides of the issue. That is interesting. Well, you know what? Another
Yeah, go ahead.
so public power in Galleon's important issue, and being aware of those needs will be important. I don't think we really ever had a chance to make that clear to previous state senators.
Well, what you want to
So-
do is my plan that I wrote, my energy plan, calls for leveraging the natural gas that we have, at our disposal.
Right.
Being clean about it as best we can. I'm not a big proponent of fracking. That may go by the wayside anyhow, because fracking is only profitable if the price of oil remains
A certain height,
right around
yeah.
$60 or more a barrel. That's why they've been shutting down. They've been laying off, hundreds of
Right.
thousands of jobs recently. The other way forward, though, with natural gas, and I think the extraction process, if we could, the technology is there to clean it up. I tend, and Ohio is late to the game, meaning that New York was in it early on, and they decided to get out, fracking, and Pennsylvania is going home, very much into it. And Pennsylvania, Ohio, and West Virginia in 2015 signed a tri-state agreement to promote this development. And that encompasses quite a bit. It's a very large framework. But in that framework is the environmental safeguards that you need.
Right.
So they're committing themselves to making sure that the communities that are exposed to the fracturing the most, they're having to put up the trucks, the pipelines, everything else, are probably gonna get, repaid. There's gonna be reparations in there. And so there's an environmental, cleanup.
Gotcha.
Sure to that. It also encourages the construction of, hopefully, and this has already happened in 2 cases. Beaverton was the first in Pennsylvania across the river, and one's going on in southern Ohio or on the other
they
side.
keep talking about that big refinery, right?
Another cracker.
The
Another
cracker.
cracker.
Well, yeah, it's a refinery, but
Well, it's a cracker.
Yeah.
And what that does is that all your plastics, like your phones, things like that, that's all ethylene. That all comes out of your natural gas.
Sure.
All right. And again, what the weather is doing, the climate is telling us, is that
Yeah.
you got to be careful about putting all your eggs in one basket.
Sure.
And Houston has the lion's share of all these facilities.
Right.
It has for years. And what happened with that hurricane is they flooded out a lot of these petrochemical facilities, and now these guys are going, you know what? Why don't we build closer to the source?
yeah, there's really
That's what's happening. So you don't have to pipeline it.
right.
You're gonna do it right
Yeah,
there.
I've got an old friend from way back who is down right at the heart of that in trying to bring the cracker to Southeast Ohio. It's really interesting to hear a part of the state which was, in terms of Republican Democratic politics, it was all Democrat down there. United Mine Workers, really strong.
Sure.
And now it's kind of flipped. And if you're not full-fledged into fracking and full-fledged into the cracker, you better bring a food taster along. I mean, it's interesting to me how that's flipped.
Well,
how
in the last
those party dynamics have flipped in Southeast
right. Well, in the last
Ohio.
10 years, these communities hadn't seen the light of day
Oh,
since the
absolutely.
mills closed.
Right.
And so now, for the first time, you're getting a huge demand for truck drivers and carpenters and plumbers, pipe fitters.
Yeah.
You name it. So the trades are all of a sudden booming. You go down there and you're going,
That's
okay.
true.
Now, I have no vested interest in this. I'm just seeing what I learned when I was in the Middle East, places like Dubai and Bahrain and Riyadh and everything, just rise up out of nothing.
Right. Yeah, Belmont County is as booming a place as anywhere in Ohio now. It's interesting.
So I want to resurrect the 2015 gas tax that they came close to putting on this industry, and it had unions. They had the white collar guys. Yeah, I was down there. I was lobbying actually in 15 for this. During my brief stint doing the natural gas work.
Yeah.
And it died in the Senate. Casey didn't want it. But what that fund did is it was basically a carbon tax.
Yeah, it was.
And I want to bring that back. And it goes into a special fund. It doesn't go into the general fund. And some of that money goes back to those communities, like I talked about. Goes into education to start reinvigorating the trades. It goes into a number of other uses as well. But that's where we got to head towards. I would put that carbon tax in place, and some of that money I would divert into an investment authority.
So why are you speaking? I mean this
Go ahead.
complimentarily. You're speaking in terms of specifics, specific problem, specific solution.
Yes.
Are you going? Did you go crazy or something? That's not what you do now. You speak in generalities and say everything is going to be swell, and you don't draw stark contrast. This is different than what you would hear the other two people competing for the Ohio Senate. We didn't talk at all about energy. We talked generally about policies, philosophies, but not specific legislation.
Yeah.
So is that going to be? That's
what
how
I'm
you
about.
roll?
That's how I roll.
I do. I'm going to talk about solutions and not just problem ID.
Yeah.
Well, that's refreshing.
Yeah, because
really.
because a lot of these problems that we this is what I get back to when I'm talking to the Democrats even.
Yeah.
And I give them a hard time. I say, look, we walked away 40 years ago. When we signed, Ross Perot was right.
Yeah.
Okay? When that trade deal went through, that was a giant sucking sound.
Oh,
and they
well,
all
that's
started
true.
following suit. Even after Tiananmen Square, and Bush gave China most favored nation status. That was a green light for everybody. Just pack up and go.
Yeah, that we have, and in this community, we have 2 or 3 firms who are reverse investors that have Chinese investments now in plant and equipment and ship parts back. I don't think we've seen the slowdown as relates to this health concern, but we're more interdependent in this little community than we ever were with reference to China. Let's switch gears back to state government and what, as people who watch this are familiar with me and getting to know you, the role of governments and how they interact is something that's of an interest to me, something I've been frustrated with over the last 8-9 years. The last gubernatorial campaign, I had the opportunity to speak to the governor about how that's changed. And knowing that Governor DeWine came up through local government, I knew, at least conceptually, we had a friend. But I've noticed a significant change, and I'll tag it on the Kasich years, in which the relationship between state level officials, bureaucrats, and or elected officials, and local officials, either bureaucrats, administrators, or local officials, has really deteriorated. I don't know if you agree with that. The partnership that we're kind of equals seems to me to be replaced by we're from state government and we're here to tell the local government how to do what and what to do.
Yeah,
So do you perceive it that way? And if you do, what ideas do you have to sort of bring into balance so that the role of, let's say, a county commissioner or a mayor is seen appropriately as having the same or similar value as a state rep or state senator? And I make a habit of upsetting trustees. I don't mean to upset township government when I talk about local government, but it seems to me local officials, township, village, city officials, and their relationship with state government has changed, and in my opinion, it changed to the detriment of the public we're both serving. Any thoughts or any
absolutely.
agreement about that? Or?
Oh yeah, no. Shortly after I moved here in the early 2000s, and Taft became governor, was when the getting back to giant sucking sounds.
Yeah.
Columbus kind of like turned the spigot off a little bit with the amount of monies. Well, actually, I think he changed the directional flows of the monies.
Sure.
So now local government funds were starting to shrink a little bit.
Right.
The money flows were going to Columbus, and Columbus was turning around and saying, okay, here's how much you're going to spend. They were starting to dictate during
Yes.
that time, in the 2000s, what counties, how much they were to get, and they all trickles all the way down to the township. Kasich accelerated that. Strickland, I don't think actually was in there long enough to do anything about it. But Kasich definitely accelerated that when he passed that tax cut. And all the experts told him at that time, if you go ahead with that, all these townships, these villages, cities, everything else are gonna have to start raising levies on their own. You're cutting us off too much. And he shrugged all of that off, I remember that.
Well, that was
very
Senate Bill
clearly.
6, wasn't it? The union deal, the unions push back against the police and fire and education. It was a big statewide issue, and the unions dumped Kasich, and I felt like he turned around and took it out on local government officials, for which we had
You're
very
absolutely
little
right.
to do
You're
with
right.
it.
I mean,
Yeah.
the timing's real close.
Yeah.
And but as expected, all of a sudden, that's when you started seeing levies everywhere.
Sure.
You know, and especially the townships, like, hey, they got to take care of those cemeteries. They'd have a cemetery levy. You know?
Well, we have, as you know, Craig, we've got the ambulance.
Yeah.
The issue of ambulance and comparable service, whether you live in the most remote part of the county or you live right next to the fire station, you're gonna get good response time. So I think that's where it plays out.
Yeah, so I think the animosity, a good friend of mine was a county commissioner at the time in Wyandotte,
Uh-huh.
and he resigned in protest during that time, and was real fired up about that.
And they still haven't restated that.
No.
I mean, when in getting old, 18 in the gubernatorial race, the people talked a lot about looking at that. The argument was, I think it's silly what they were saying. Like there's like $97 in the state treasury or 79 or whatever. They said at the end of Strickland that just.
Well,
I mean,
what
that
Ted-
just wasn't.
well,
that,
yeah, I mean,
things weren't great,
well,
but there
what
was
Ted
more
did-
than $70.
Right.
In the
Well,
coffers,
that's yes. Did he drain the rainy day fund? Certainly. Okay.
Right.
Well, it was raining pretty hard.
It sure was. It sure was.
I mean, that was.
Yeah, I
Ted,
agree with you.
Ted
on that.
walked into a real tough situation there. I think I'll digress for a bit. Where I was left down a bit was after the crash, which affected me personally. And I was thinking, oh man, go in there, Obama, go in there with guns blazing,
Right.
drop a ton of money, don't bail out Wall Street, bail out Main Street,
yeah.
right? No, didn't see any of that. We saw a tepid, industrial plan. He never came through with the infrastructure bank that he talked about. That would have been a good start.
Right.
And he left Ted hanging. That if he had come in with a just a gangbuster, FDR style program.
Right.
I mean, I don't care what it cost, billions, billions. You would have had a much better recovery, much stronger recovery. That thing was nothing, and that's where the problem the United States did at the time, and Europe. They went the austerity. They were cutting.
Right.
And so you're cutting programs at a time that you shouldn't have been cutting programs. You need to get people back to work. 9 million people were laid off.
Well, you get to see it all around this Senate district. Tend to look at it just from Crawford County's perspective, but most of the problems we have in local government that have a lack of money.
Yes.
The way it's playing out is that county government is pitted against township government.
Correct.
City government. Bucyrus is a good example when it comes to ambulance.
That's right.
A sense that Bucyrus should subsidize ambulance service for everyone in the county. Well, I don't.
Well, during this austerity, then you've got towns, cross counties, county versus county and everything else. This is what we've been reduced to.
And they've got billions sitting in Columbus, so
That's
what
you're saying. So he's sitting on his cash. Kasich sitting on his $2.3 billion. He can't go any higher because it's only going to be a percentage of the general fund.
Right.
And DeWine's sitting on it, and I'm thinking, what are you doing?
Well, I was hoping, and yet maybe new legislature will see that is that this next biennium that will start in January of next year, the planning on it. In fact, a lot of that's happening now in the top levels of the bureaucracy.
Well,
but local governments have got to be. I'm hoping that we'll have a legislature that will do more than just placate us.
Right. So goes back to my local government initiative, which is I'm advocating the creation of an Ohio Public Bank. There's only one of its kind in the country, and that's the Bank of North Dakota. That was formed in 1919 as a result of a populist farmers revolt. Revolt. And they've been very successful in the past 100 years. They weathered the crash. They have fostered a lot of development in the oil and gas industry. Obviously, big boom up there around Fargo. Low interest, extremely low interest student loans. They help out municipalities with infrastructure needs, wastewater, water treatment plants, things like that. I want to do the same thing here. We create a public bank. You talk about reaching into your towns. right into your working with your city councils, your mayors, your county commissioners. What exactly, what needs do you guys have from an infrastructure level? And having a public bank.
Sure.
I would take 500 million out of that 2.3 billion that they're sitting on, and that would be the seed money.
Yeah, that's another new idea. Hey Matt, we got two ideas we're gonna borrow today. It's interesting to me. We'll try to sort of bring things to a little bit of a closure. And you don't need to comment on it, but you're welcome to. Is that the contested primary for this Senate seat has focused a lot on personality issues, differences between the two candidates, a mutual lack of respect for each other. Now, I'll probably hear from both of them, oh, no, I respect them. Then start acting that way. There's a bunch of people wondering, be civil, you got a couple weeks left. But most of the issues aren't issues at all. I get the flyers. You probably don't get them because you're not that proper blood type. But I get the flyers, and they seem to be heavy duty on personality and personality differences, stylistic differences, but no content. That's it's totally different than this conversation. If I wanted you to talk about personalities, I bet I couldn't get you to do that. But if you wanted to talk about 4 or 5 other policy issues, we'd be here till the sun went down.
Yeah,
it's very much a contrast. As I've sat and had conversation, listened to the three of you, how much you have specific solutions. Now, whether you can get them passed or not, that's a totally another battle. But you can't get an initiative passed if you don't have any.
Correct.
And so I suspect if we went through the list of state government issues, you'd have. And I don't mean to mock it like a Liz Warren, a plan for this, a plan for that. But you've thought through, these are important issues in state government to this district, and I've got a solution for what I perceive the problem is.
Yes.
And that's just way different, Craig. I don't. I know
I mean,
one thing's for sure. I'm not going to vote for you in 2 weeks, but I wouldn't rule it out at the end of the year.
Well, driving in on 598 here, right away you see what you're trying to do with your development out there. You're trying to build state-of-the-art facilities so these guys could attract in and everything else. But you got to widen that road.
Yep.
You got to widen that road because it's got to be a good service road, and it's going to make it safe for the people. And it may, I know that there's encroaching a little bit, but in the end, it's going to be a better road for them.
Yeah, when
but you've got to,
When I had the opportunity to build that, be the deputy director at ODOT when that was got built, you probably know that, and some of the people who were in the community who were most against it have now become friends of mine, if you will, amazingly. And a lot of it had to do with all the truck traffic that much of the truck traffic that comes on 30 comes to 598 and goes from here to Marion.
Right.
And so I told one of my most outspoken critics that every truck that goes past your farm goes past my house. she got the biggest smile and started laughing. And her now recently deceased husband and she, Marilyn, and Don were they're actually friendly now. So this notion that you try to do things to improve, they don't. Sometimes you upset people, but you have to take action. It sounds like rather than being a placeholder in the General Assembly, you'd have specific things that you
I
should be introduced, debated, some accepted, some they'll say nice try. And I think that's really important.
Correct, and absolutely. I mean, somebody, I think it was Andrew Carter asked me that too. He said, or it might have been even the Daily Chief person. I said, so she goes, you expect to get, hit the ground running? I said, oh yeah.
Right.
I said, there isn't it's not an alarmist kind of thing, but it's something that we need to be working on. I come from a standpoint particularly the 2 groups that I addressed today, 2 retirement groups. Growing up, I was taught man, that's the greatest generation, right?
Yeah.
You know, they weathered the Depression. They got through World War II, and got us on the road.
Right.
Growing up, I thought we were going to be the greatest generation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, taking, you know, what that, well, that
The
happy
boomers.
the happy place that we've been given, and now we need to move on and leave our place better than the way we got it. And we're not doing that.
Yeah,
That's the way I was brought up. It's like you leave the place better than the way you received it.
Yeah, I've got these Xers, 40, 30-something-year-old kids, and they point out to me what a royal mess the boomers have made of things.
Yeah.
We debate that. I'm not sure. I think what they'll find is it's harder to sustain something as successful as this country's been in the last 50, 60 years. It's harder to sustain it than most people think. So that's the challenge for you and for others.
Right.
Really, this is not going to be easy.
Right.
And,
well, the tough thing, and this is what I try to tell people, is the tough thing is the events that have happened here at the national level, the circus.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
That's out of our control.
Right.
We feel powerless.
Right.
You know, and then we switch off, and it's like, you know, I don't want to talk politics and everything else.
Sure.
What they're missing is the real show is here, right in front of you. What you could control with your community, your state. Those are the things that you have some voice. Still have a vote.
Right.
Provided get you that visibility. Yeah. If we lack visibility now, you're compounding it a little bit. But provided you have a good relationship, good visibility, and everything else, you have more control over your local and your state level politics.
Right.
And that's why I'm trying to get people back engaged. Mm-hmm. This is something that Ohio, we can move forward. We need to move forward. Mm-hmm. And we've got, again, 10, 20, 30 years, we can utilize the natural gas as a bridge fuel till fusion is invented, or we're beaming it down solar power.
Yeah. Okay.
Either way.
Right.
But leverage those resources, finance it, and you will be able to finance a number of other changes, the structural changes that you need to make. You want to build more EV ports up and down the highways. You want to build mass transit. We used to have mass transit. There's no reason why we can't go back to it.
Right.
Gallion was hooked up one time.
Yeah, we had interurban.
Yeah, interurban.
Yeah, sure. Well, the one thing I can say for sure, this is going to be, as from the point of view of people who like politics, the sometimes call themselves political junkies. I mean, I really enjoy it. Spent a life involved in it and studying it and enjoying it. And this has been an interesting primary to observe. But after this half-hour, 40-minute conversation, I think we as voters and potential constituents, we haven't seen anything yet. I have a feeling that what happens in the general election campaign will be really stimulating and really important ideas on both sides. And for me, a solution-based approach to running for office is so laudable. So I congratulate you on talking about things that you want to get done and not other people who may be pursuing the same position that you are. So that's made this really enjoyable. I suspect the people that will watch this will have learned a lot about Craig Swartz, and you're going to get a few more months to learn more about him as we get through this March primary and head in down this what will seem for you a long 2020. But encourage you to come back to Crawford County, get over to Gallion and get to know this part of your district that you're running for, and develop a local perspective versus the bank shot off of Columbus. And so I really appreciate I really appreciate the time you've taken. I've learned a whole bunch about yourself and your candidacy, and all of it's been really positive. So I want to thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Hey, thanks everyone. Craig Swartz. A couple weeks ago, I thought this national primary is going to be really boring. Everybody come on over to the Republican side and load up those Crawford County Commissioner races. Well, after the last couple of days, we'll probably have a really exciting primary here in Ohio and in this district. So if you're a Democrat, go ahead and cast your complimentary vote for Mr. Swartz, and then we'll be back at it in the fall. So I really appreciate you coming in, and look forward to the balance of this year and the discussions we'll have in the Ohio Senate seat. So thanks a lot, and continue to pass this along, share it with other people. It's our substitute for daily traditional print journalism. So thanks again. We'll talk to you soon.